Okay, cool. So I think this evening, yeah, I don't want to kind of drag this session on unnecessarily. I think primarily what I'll do is project the questions for the assignments, and then we can have discussions around the questions, make sure that everyone is on the same page, and I will obviously then answer any questions that anyone has at this stage. I have seen a couple of emails coming in the last day or two, but I just haven't had time to address them yet. So yeah, anyway, I'll pop on as well to that and see if there are any questions to address here. But those of you that are here, if you've sent me a mail with a question and I haven't responded, please just pop that in the chat then as well, so we can get onto that. Okay. Alrighty, let me just bring up this thing. Apologies, I need to click around a bit. Okay, should be showing my screen. I'm just trying to figure out how to pop the chat box out so I can see it as well. I actually don't think I can, so I'm just gonna, okay, it's fine. We won't scroll for a little bit. Anyway, sorry. Okay, yeah, good evening, everyone. All right, so yeah, your assignment is due on the 7th of October. So really still a fair amount of time, which is lovely. So yeah, if you haven't gotten a start on it yet, it is okay. But yeah, I think to get a start on it now in this coming week would probably be a good time to get that started. I know you must have other assignments coming in. You know, this assignment's actually due relatively late in the assessment season, which I am fairly thankful for in terms of marking. I've just had 3 groups of third-year research psychs handed in assignments, so yeah, marking is going to be interesting. But anyway, yeah, so I understand, obviously, if you haven't started yet, it's absolutely fine. There is time. Okay. And then hopefully you will have a very clear, you know, direction where you're going for this assignment after tonight. I know I did briefly discuss the questions, I think it was our second session. But yeah, the idea of tonight is really to just go into depth and answer any questions that arise from this. Okay. I do believe that this is quite a straightforward assignment though, so please don't overthink it. Absolutely follow the mark allocation and follow the little instructions that you've been given, and just make sure to stay on point, and then you will do well, essentially. Okay. And obviously you are required to use external sources. Let me just scroll. So you have to use sources outside of your textbook to accompany your textbook in this assignment. Okay. I believe it's 5 external sources, and that is really, when we get to the rubric, oh, there isn't a rubric. Anyway, it's going to be really essential for marking. I imagine in the memo there'll probably be, usually it's like 5 or 8 marks or something that you get for using enough references and correct, actually academically credible sources. Okay, and it's really just throwing away marks if you don't use enough or the correct sources, right? Okay, then something else to point out, obviously, is just the 8-page limit. I know it is weird to get a page limit and not a word limit. I can't explain the logic, but this is the way it is. And because this is a page limit, it is very important that you please follow these guidelines down here in terms of font size, and your margin spacing. So this is just the normal generic margin spacing that should just be, you know, the standard that pops up when you open Word, but you can always go and check and make sure that the margins aren't too narrow or just too wide, I think is the idea, because obviously if you increase your margins a little bit, you can squeeze in a few extra words, but essentially it's not really worth it. And because the instruction is here, there's definitely going to be marks in the memo on this as well, that you followed the formatting instructions. Okay. So yeah, just make sure you're doing that. Line spacing 1.5. yeah, just the generic margins, and then use Calibri or a similar font, so Calibri or Arial basically. And then if you use those, then font size 11, because they are bigger fonts. And then if Times New Roman, which is just standard, Times New Roman's nice, it's easy to read, then use font size 12. Okay. So that's there. Just make sure basically once you've finished your assignment, you go back and check this formatting stuff before you submit it. Okay. But yeah, I absolutely really have to use the page limit because it's a page limit. It's very final. There's no leeway. So anything that goes beyond 8 pages, I will not mark. And so what is included in the pages, which I imagine are these questions that are popping up, I just can't see them yet, so it will be from the beginning of question 1, okay, so like where the start, so not including your cover page and not including the reference list. Okay, so it's the body of the answers of questions 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let me now pop back here to look at the chat. There we go. Okay, Nicolette, I answered your question. Margin change that you have to follow there actually narrows everything. Okay, so is this 2.5 narrower than the word standard? I mean, this is weird. I haven't seen this in the longest time. Okay, look, I will absolutely not have a problem at all, and I'm stating this on record, that if you just use the standard, margins that Word gives you, the one it even says normal margins or something is the preset. It doesn't, the one that's not narrow, basically. I won't take marks off for that. It's just that if you narrow the margins so that they're obviously narrow, so that if the text is sitting, let me draw quick. So like if you pull the margins so that the text comes all the way to the end, that's the problem. But if you have this kind of normal sized margin, like, the whole world does, then yeah, I'm not going to take marks off for that. Okay. I'm actually going to put feedback in this assessment to just make them give you a word limit, because this is strange. Okay. Can 2 half pages count as a page? What does that mean, Rebecca? Because I understand, because of maybe starting another question on another page. I think because you have this page limit, you don't need to start each question on a new page. Just make sure that the heading is clear. It says question 2. Okay. Yeah, so it's 8 pages just for the questions. So you'll probably have your whole document might be 11 pages, because you'll have your normal, title page, that's the template for VC, and then your reference list may be up to 2 pages. I don't know, it's possible. Probably not, but yeah, so that's fine. You can have 40 pages of references. That's not the problem. The problem is the content of the answers. Okay. I mean, if you had 40 pages of references, I think you probably have 8 pages just of in-text citations. But anyway, okay, cool. So that's the formatting. Is there anything I've left out, or is there any formatting issue that anyone still has a question around? We can get out the way. Okay, good to hear. It's anyone else all good? Cool. Alrighty, let's move on to question 1 then. Okay, so question 1 is a very simple comparative piece. You are comparing really Freud and Erikson as developmental theories that you have, they're stage theories. Okay, so that's what you're comparing. Let me just read out what the question says so that it's all here. Okay, Freud and Erikson depicted development across the lifespan as occurring in stages. Using paragraphs, summarize the stages of each respective theory with the milestones in each stage. Explain one way that the 2 theorists might differ in their approach. Okay, so this is extraordinarily straightforward. There's zero trick to this. They are literally, it doesn't even say write an essay. Okay, so you don't even need an introduction and a conclusion to this. I mean, it would be nice, but essentially a waste of space, because you're not required to do that. Okay, so If I were you, I would just use simple little subheadings. You say, this is Freud's psychosexual stage theory, then you have Erikson's psychosocial developmental theory, summarize them, each of those, and then you have another, the last paragraph probably or two would be the comparison. So maybe ways the theories differ or something, whatever the subheading you want to use. You can be creative, you can be boring, it's up to you, it doesn't matter. But as long as those subheadings are there, it will really help with organization. Okay. And it's also just good to help keep you on track while you're writing as well. Okay, so you can see the mark allocation that goes there. There's obviously a lot of stock put into the summary aspect of this. So please reference, okay? Because obviously none of this is your opinion, your reflection, none of it's your ideas. You're literally just summarizing existing theory and then comparing them, okay? So yeah, you need to be using 5 sources that are not your textbook, please, for this. Okay, obviously, and this is actually, it's often an interesting question that comes up. As much as you need to be using outside sources, sorry, if you find a source somewhere that contradicts what your textbook says about the theory, then default to the textbook's knowledge, okay? And then, just exclude whatever source is contradictory and get another one. Okay, but you mean that shouldn't really happen. This is really straightforward theoretical summaries. Okay. So please, credible sources. Okay, I'll say this again. The only credible sources are journal articles from, real journals. There must be like a DOI number. It must exist. And yeah, published academic books or textbooks. Any other textbooks you may have that will have these theories in them. A lot of intro to psych textbooks you may have had from first year will cover these theories, so you can use those as well. And then, yeah, journal articles. Please do not use web sources. There's no reason to, particularly in this question, like there is no reason to include any kind of statistic or anything. And it's just start the practice of not using weird web sources, okay? And this is something as well that's just important to point out, because even if it's an informational post on the Stanford University website, it's still a blog post. Okay, it's still not technically a published academic source, and the difference is the peer review process. That doesn't happen with any content you find on the internet. Okay. It's a really formalized whole long spiel to do with research, and when you get to research psych, we will go into that in depth. But for now, just make sure that, please, they are real sources, okay? And even though I do say this all the time, I'll still inevitably see a couple of Course Hero or simplypsychology.com. Just please exit, okay? You can use it as information to learn and whatever in the meanwhile, but do not cite those as academic sources in your assignments. Okay. Cool. Didn't mean to go down a whole rabbit hole, but it was important information. Okay, any questions? Let me see here. In this edition of the textbook, there's limited info on the specific stages. Will this be the research side? Yes. Okay, so yeah, go and find then the information. Okay, if your textbook is limited. This may be why they actually put this question in here, to make you go and find the information elsewhere. I was wondering why it's such a simple question. So yeah, you're gonna have to go use other sources. Please use, I think the instruction on the 5 sources thing is a bit vague, but I think it actually applies to the whole assessment. So basically at the end of the assignment, if you have less than 6 sources on your reference list, that's a problem. Okay. All right, any questions on question 1? Also, I encourage you guys to share resources as well. If you come across a few good articles or books or something, do share that with each other. You do have I imagine you guys have a WhatsApp group, but also that Padlet that the contract is on. You can just make another column at the end for resources, and you can post stuff there as well. And everyone has access to it. Righty. Let me scroll down to question 2. Okay, so this question is cool. You get to watch a TED Talk. So that's really just for context, okay? Go and watch that in your own time. And then, but basically, Irene says in this TED Talk, you are not the battleground which nature and nurture fight. You are the canvas on which they collaborate. Okay. So in other words, the argument being presented here is that it's not nature versus nurture, it's nature and nurture. Okay. And yeah, I think even when we've discussed this in a previous session, that's more or less the thing we land on most of the time. So that's what you're unpacking in this question. You are going to write about the nature versus nurture debate. And it says here as well, use 2 credible academic sources to back up the situation, and you literally just get 10 marks for that. You get 10 marks just for making sure you use 2 credible academic sources. That's nuts. Okay, anyway, so 3 marks. Please don't disregard that. That's a cool little tidbit there. Okay, but basically what you're going to do, unpack the quotes in your write-up in relation to the nature versus nurture debates, 10 marks, and then use examples and arguments made in the video to substantiate your arguments. So basically you're doing kind of like a little case study, and your video is like the case scenario that you would get. Okay, so view this almost like a comprehension that you used to do in high school English, right? Where the source you've got is the video, and you're going to use examples that Irene uses in the video to make your arguments. Okay, and obviously, if I were you, it would be nice to write like a little couple of lines of introduction, because otherwise it just seems very like splat information. At the very least, pop like a thesis statement in the beginning about the debate. And then, yeah, I would go into just introducing the debate. So what does it mean? What does nature refer to? What does nurture refer to? And why is this a debate in social sciences? Okay, it's because this is a debate it's multidisciplinary, but keep the focus on psychology. And why is that a thing? Okay, and then, yeah, use 2 credible sources, and that does include your textbook. Oh, wait, it doesn't. Okay, retracting that statement. You can use your textbook, but that doesn't count as the 2 extra sources. Okay, so you can use 3 sources for this thing. You can use 10 if you want to, but you must absolutely have 2 external to your textbook sources. Right. I feel like I just said sources 20,000 times. Can someone help out Melissa there? Pop the link for the WhatsApp group on the chat. I'm not on the WhatsApp group, so it's a student space. Yeah, so when you refer to the TED Talk, you can just put in brackets, Romero and whatever date it gives for the video when you click on YouTube. Remember what the date is on the video, yeah. And then you add it to your reference list. Just, practice that referencing, because that's what you're referring to. And then also, if you're not super clear in your language, then it makes it more clear to me when I'm marking it that, you're referring to an example from the video. Okay, so yeah, again, just a really straightforward question. Unpacking, just try and bring some kind of insight to it. But it's a very this is really like a regurgitation content assignment. But yeah, obviously, if you're creative and produce a nice little academic argument, then you're going to do very, very well, that kind of thing. Okay. Any questions? Any questions on even the content of this? Like, is everyone clear what nature, nurture all means? We can, if anyone needs to have a discussion on that, refresher. Any of you maybe done sociology? That's usually something that's covered in Sociology 1 as well, especially when you do socialization. Alrighty. Okay, let's see what question 3 has to offer. Can everyone see that? Just want it all there at the same time. Okay. Alrighty, question 3, you have a little case scenario situation again. So it's the same thing, just they give you a textual bit of context here. Okay, so twin study. These are so classic. There's so many of them in the literature. So go and find a source that have done twin studies on things like this, and those will be very good sources for you to even refer to. Okay, as external sources. And that's what they mean when they say conduct necessary research. And then now also, just to point out, they have said write an essay. Okay. So question 1 and 2 do not require an essay structure, but question 3 absolutely does. So that means that there'll probably be like 2-ish marks in because there will be a rubric for this question in the memo when I get it. And yeah, there could be anywhere between 2 to 5 marks just for that structure, for providing an introduction, body, and then a conclusion as well. Okay, so this is the case. Jessica and Joshua, so creative in naming, are expecting twins. However, Joshua's family have a medical history with a rare genetic condition, which the couple worry may be passed down to their children. In Jessica's family, they have the same concern regarding mood disorders. Okay, so you've got 2 things popping out of this scenario already. We've got a history of rare genetic conditions. So that should be pinging that whole session we did with the genetics and the dominant and recessive genes and all that stuff, okay, how genetics are passed through. And then Jessica's family have the same concern regarding mood disorders, okay? So are mood disorders heritable? Interesting. Get some research on that. There are differing opinions and differing evidence that has been presented around mood disorders. Mood disorders are notoriously difficult to nail down, okay? But yes, there is that element of heritability that has been researched fairly thoroughly of late. Okay, all right, so there are 3 content points that you have to cover in the essay. The last one is telling you to use sources. We'll get there, okay? So the dynamics of gene-environment interactions as well as epigenetics. Okay, so there are 2 things you fundamentally have to divine. Oh, wow, divine. I mean, divine too, but to define in the beginning are these 2 concepts. Okay, so what are gene-environment interactions? Okay, cast your minds back to the last session we had. Go have a look at those sources, all about that. And then epigenetics in various contexts. So, I mean, those 2 things lead in to each other. So, you know, we speak about gene-environment interactions in fairly broad terms, and the field of epigenetics is developing out of that theory. Okay. Yeah, so because you need to use extra sources here, I suggest using more than just 2, because you will get this concept of various contexts then from different sources, right? So yeah, different contexts, meaning probably like even possibly different cultural contexts, environmental contexts, yeah, literally anything. Okay, the word context is dynamic in this situation. So yeah, whatever you write about here is going to be quite dependent on those sources that you look for. Okay, and I encourage detail here. Use examples from those sources to explain these concepts. It will be easier for you really to do that more clearly when you have those examples to draw on. Okay, in doing so, you'll be finding these genetic studies. Okay, so you need to speak about the findings of genetic studies on, and then we have 4 different components here. I'm trying to draw with relative precision. It's not going well. There we go. Okay, so intellectual abilities, first of all, so things like learning and intelligence, cognitive abilities, okay? Then we've got temperament. Temperament is very firmly rooted in genetics, but also, yeah, this thing of development, okay? Current idea is that we are born with whatever temperament that may be bestowed on us by whoever, but then there are environmental factors that do affect temperaments, okay? So go and research that as well. Personality comes into it, and psychological disorders. So you can already see that unless you find an extraordinarily broad article for this research, you're needing to find 3 already. Okay, I mean 4, probably 4. It's likely that you'll find one that talks about temperament and personality kind of together. Okay. So this whole thing at the bottom here of that you're required to consult 2 or more academic sources, the proof of the pudding here is going to be in that or more. Okay, find more than 2. It will help you answer the question and in enough depth to get like 4 marks for this. This assignment is so straightforward that 100% is really possible. Okay. All right, and then the last bit in your essay will be the controversies surrounding genetic research. And I mean, oh boy, have there been a fair amount of controversies around that over history. And then, I mean, obviously there's just been atrocious things that people have done throughout history, and that's why we have research ethics now. But again, put a pin in that for research suck. But yeah, there's still a fair amount of controversy surrounding even genetic research even now. Yeah, so that would even be another article. I mean, people literally study ethics and things around different fields of research full time. So you could even find maybe some kind of review on that. And whatever your textbook says as well, you can use that as a source, but it doesn't count as this at least 2 extra. So for this question, just for absolute clarity, you have to use at least 3 sources, okay? One of which can be the textbook. I encourage you to use more sources, comfortably somewhere around 5 or 6. Okay. Here is the rubric we have been given for question 3, so that will be quite helpful to go through now. Okay, any questions? I'm hearing questions happening for question 3. Let's see. How many pages should the essay be? Okay, interesting. So question 3 is worth more marks than the other 2. So it can be a bit longer. And it makes sense that it would be because of the structure. You know, you need an introduction and a conclusion. So if you have 8 pages in total, I mean, yeah, it really depends on how you want to split this. I think that two and a bit, and then 3 would be a pretty good split. I think question 1 is actually fairly short because you can, yeah, I mean, that depends on how concisely you're able to write about that information. But yeah, I would split it that way. I'd say 2 and a bit, and then leave yourself 3 pages-ish for the last question. Just because of that structure, you don't want to try and rush it too much and squish too much in and then lose marks for structure. Okay. So in terms of your introduction, it doesn't have to be very long and waffly. Just put an attention grabber on the topic, brief sentence or 2 about context, so situate what you're speaking about, gene-environment interactions, epigenetics, and controversies. And then you do the roadmap bit of an introduction, right? So you say this essay addresses or will speak about or whatever, and then you essentially give your subheadings, and then done. And then the conclusion, vital to just pull everything together and conclude with a statement of the conclusion to your argument, basically, that you have been working out through your essay. Okay, should we? I think that subheadings are valuable in writing and in keeping you on track in terms of writing. And for clarity, because to be honest, it's very difficult. It's a difficult skill to write academically with good flow without them. So they do help you, and I enjoy a good subheading, but obviously they do take up a bit of space, so it's up to you really, if you want to use them. But yeah, again, I just do suggest it in this case because you do have distinct little areas to cover. But yeah, you won't lose marks for not having subheadings, okay? As like a tick box type thing. Okay, let's look at this rubric quickly. Obviously not, you can read the rubric in your own time, but I'm just going to highlight some of the really important things that will land you basically in the top block. Okay. Can we combine the cover and title page? Yes, yeah, just put one cover page. That's totally fine. Okay. Alrighty, so question 1 and 2 are marked according to the memo, right? So this is just for question 3. Okay, so yeah, really just you get up to 20 marks for covering the definitions of the dynamics of gene-environment interactions and then epigenetics. And obviously it's important to situate this in various contexts. Okay, that's going to be the key probably to land you in this top block as opposed to the second one, is that nuance of the context. Okay, because if you see basically very much similar, but it's just this idea of exceptionally explained, right? And that, to me, the way that we generally interpret that is that nuance, providing the context, giving an example from a source. Okay, that's what happens. That's how you do that to get into that block. Okay, and then you get 15 marks, a total of 15 marks for the controversies, right? So that's going to be a subheading for you, or just that section at the end of your essay. And yeah, again, just use an article or two as examples. You'll very likely find journal articles that have discussed some kind of major controversy that's happened in recent history. Try not to use sources that are older than 10 years, okay? And then use that here. Okay, so they even give you some clues here, which is lovely in the rubric. This doesn't happen very often, so do take advantage. Okay, so yeah, here. So an understanding of how gene therapy and research is applicable to the scenario. So that kind of gives you a clue when you want to go and look for this controversy debates, right? Look at gene therapy. What is gene therapy? Why is it controversial? Does anyone know? Does anyone want to offer a quick little tidbit? What is gene therapy? Just in simple terms, obviously it can be an extraordinarily complex scientific thing, but from a developmental point of view, what is gene therapy used for? Nicoletta, yeah, sure. Would you like to speak?
Hi everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's good, because last week I couldn't speak. nobody could hear me. Okay, so my understanding in brief, my understanding of gene therapy is that it's a scientific technique that modifies a person's genes so that it can prevent disease or even treat disease before a baby is born. So genetic disorders could be removed, or something can actually be added to a gene as well. So
yeah,
there's the
and
gene therapy.
That's where a lot of the
messing about with genes. They mess about with the genes. There we go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, that's my contribution.
That's it. Yeah, that's pretty much a really great summary. They mess around with the genes.
They mess about with the genes.
Mess about with the genes. Quote. But yeah, and I think a large part of the controversy sits in a lot of religious debates, obviously, because, you know, a large part of many, especially the monotheistic, whatever, the ones with one God, you know, there's that heavy element of God designed creatures and you shouldn't mess with that, basically. And so obviously this idea of gene therapy pushes buttons in respect to that. So yeah, likely you'll find some debate around that somewhere. Yeah. Is it like CRISPR? I don't know. What do you mean by that? I think I'm just not twigging what that means. Oh, yes, it's a technology used to edit genes. Okay, cool. Yeah, literally, right? And yeah, so I mean, these things ethically should be used to, you know, help people, eliminate possibly problematic genes that, could house some dread disease or something. Yeah, that idea of genetic engineering. And yeah, I think that there's a fair amount of things like this. And like, will people take it too far? Where do we draw this line in humanity to mess with things like this? And that really is generally where that debate takes off. I mean, what is kind of adjacently related to this is, I don't know if anyone knows, but like, we literally do know how to clone things. Like, they've cloned sheep and things like ages ago, but then it was immediately outlawed because that's just like, I don't know, a horror movie waiting to happen. It's like Stephen King wrote that period of history. Yeah, so I mean, it's similar, right? Because copying genes genetically. It's a similar line of controversy. Rebecca, to a bit of a looser extent, epigenetic, those like social and environmental behavioral epigenetic factors. But when people are speaking about gene therapy, they're talking about literally scientifically poking around in genes as the zygote is forming in utero. But considering obviously the overall context of the essay, that's a great question because, yeah, bring in those environmental factors as well. Righty. Yeah, I mean, look, this is definitely the most interesting question in this whole assignment. So it's fascinating. I think you can probably end up going down a bit of a research rabbit hole with this. But yeah, it is fascinating. So let yourselves explore these examples and draw on that to answer the question. Yeah, and then just also what is important is to not stray too far down a rabbit hole, okay? Just make sure that you stick in this scenario that you've been given with Jessica and Joshua and their concerns over hereditary disease and mood disorders, okay? So it will help you narrow your discussion. Yeah, so epigenetics is also just much more of a long-term thing, right? It's basically it's microevolution, so it's the way that we can influence genes over time, as opposed to something like gene therapy, which is physically messing about with the genes, and that would be an instant situation. Okay, lovely. Yeah, any other questions on this question or the assignment in general? Have any other little gremlin questions popped up while we've been speaking? Yeah, there you go. You will get 5 marks for academic structure, okay, and sources. And that is the assignment. So I guess, yeah, my advice, give yourself enough time to do it. They're each very straightforward questions, and really, I think the main thing is going to be limiting your pages, really, at the end of the day. So yeah, approach it in chunks. Give yourself enough time to, deal with the questions on their own. It is due on the 7th of October. Okay, so the submission portal usually opens like 10 days before it's due, right? So it won't be there yet, but it shall be in time. Cool. Yeah, if there aren't any other questions, I'm happy to leave it here. But yeah, I'll just hang on until everyone leaves in case there are any questions. But otherwise, have a lovely evening, everyone, and good luck for this. And I will see you again in 2 weeks. Does anyone have a WhatsApp link? I'm at a conference at the moment. Let me stop recording. That's okay. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I'm at a conference in East London on it's a teaching learning conference on AI, and yeah, just all of the things around AI really. And I did a little study with my honors students. Well, I suppose with my honors students as guinea pigs, willing guinea pigs. Yeah, about AI and basically the ethical choices that we make cognitively. Yeah, using Bandura. Basically, I kind of just found that there is this interesting thing now that AI is introduced in this, that the world of academic integrity is more complex than it was previously. So yeah, it's been quite interesting. When it's published, I'll share it with everyone. Um, yeah, it's not necessarily my like main area of research. It sort of happened. Yeah, so a couple of us came to the conference. Cool. Awesome. Have a lovely evening, everyone. And yeah, good luck with your assignments. Do email me though if there are any other questions, and I will hopefully get a chance tomorrow to sift through the emails. And if I haven't addressed anything this evening, then I'll post announcements with that. Yeah, research is absolutely fascinating, and I think this actually kind of exposes a nice amount of that as well. Awesome. Cool. Good evening. Bye.